Hello, welcome to Professor Skye's Sweaty Record Review, episode 196, the only first listen new music review show hosted by a French professor immediately after leaving the YMCA. So today I'm going to be reviewing an album by a group called Fourtracula and the Sesual Intellectuals. Now, recently, last week, I actually did a whole little video essay about the 4-track and the importance of 4-track music, but that's actually not why I'm reviewing this record. And before I even get to reviewing this record, I'm going to be giving something of a lecture or a video essay. And that's a video essay about parasocial relationships and listening to what I would call parasocial music. So what do I mean by that? Well, here's a quick, in case you don't know what the term parasocial means, it's definitely taken on a life of its own lately. It's very important with the nature of technology and the way we feel so immediately connected to people. According to definitions online, it is a one-sided relationship where one person extends emotional energy, interest, and time to the other party, and the other person, a persona, is completely unaware of the other's existence. So, when I'm reviewing this album by Fourtracula, I'm only reviewing it because I've listened to the lead singer, the guy, for the past 4 years on his own podcast. So as I've sort of indicated around here, I don't always talk about it on this channel, but I am a Star Wars collector and a Star Wars fan. And this guy, Jason Ward, the lead singer, the titular Fourtracula, has done this podcast for at least I've listened for 4 years, at least, maybe even 5. And the thing is that the parasocial relationship, you feel like you know the person. And the other thing is, I've done a podcast for 10 years on collecting vintage Star Wars toys, like this and that. If you listen to that show, you'll know why this is worth $10 and that's worth $10,000. But, I've done this show and I've had this kind of weird experience where people come up and meet me, at Star Wars conventions. And they're like, "Oh, Skye, I've listened to you for 10 years and I feel like you know me." And my answer is usually you do. I mean, okay, you don't really, right? Because a lot of these people, I've never heard of them, or I barely, maybe they've sent in 1 or 2 emails, but it's not like it's an equal exchange. But there's something about the nature of digital communication, of especially podcasts, especially YouTube channels like this one, where you do give so much of yourself. Even if you're talking about something as abstract and stupid as the Emperor's New Throne or whatever, in which you really do reveal a lot of yourself. So when I come into this review, I'm not actually coming in neutral. Now, first of all, a little bit about this show that he does. It's all about Star Wars spoilers. So it's what's going to happen in the next movie. And in theory, that doesn't interest me. As a matter of fact, I don't actually want to hear the spoilers anymore. I'm a little bit upset because episode 9, that he ruined it for me. He told me, I saw the trailer and I knew what everything meant. And I didn't even really want to hear them, but I enjoy his podcast so much that I listen to it. And sorry, someone came into the house. I had to change locations here. So I listen to his podcast so much that, I feel like I know him. My kids sort of feel like they know him. I used to, especially a couple of years ago, listen to the show all the time with my kids, like my daughter, whose room I'm in now. Although eventually, he sort of they got into telling lots of swears and dirty jokes about Wookiee genitalia and stuff. And that's cool. I liked it, but it was a little bit too much for the kids. But, so this is this weird place I'm in where I listen to this and I know him and I feel like I don't. And I feel like I do. This kind of weird position. I'm really tempted because I realize there's a fair chance that I will get some viewers of this video who are also fans of his podcast. So I'm tempted, make inside jokes, but then that would ruin my show. I'm like, "Hey, Boshek," right? That doesn't really work for this show, right? So it's very complicated. And it got me thinking, sort of theoretically, sort of intellectually, about the nature of parasocial relationships. And the thing is that music, I think, is the first true creator of parasocial relationships. I guess books are. I guess first person books would be Montaigne. Yeah, Montaigne is the first a parasocial relationship in existence. But still, music is pretty early in there. And definitely it's a very direct feeling where you feel like you know the people who are singing, if they're singing about their lives. And so here I am, right? I'm getting ready to listen to Fourtracula and the Sexual Intellectuals. This person who I know, I'm not a fanboy, I don't like follow him on Twitter. I don't know everything about him. All that I know is he does this show. I like it. It's, I don't know if, I'm sure you're like me, where there's like podcasts and YouTube channels where the second they come out, like they go to the top of your queue. And that's what it's been for 4 years with this guy's show. In general, like the sense that I get of him from his show is he's sort of like a sad guy living the dream. So like he does the show with his it seems like his best friend who's also on this album, which I gotta admit that made me like kind of happy. It's like, hey, the quiet guy on this podcast is on there too, and I have a quiet guy on my podcast, so that's fun. But like, he sort of like lives in Orange County and he gets to talk about Star Wars and he has his music, but at the same time there's, I don't know, I get a sense of a sort of darkness and a sort of sadness to him. As far as I seem to remember that he got divorced recently, so I think I feel that on this record, that kind of sadness that creeps in. But that's my impression of who he is. And the thing is, with a parasocial relationship, you feel like you know the person. So that gets awfully close to a great problem, which is listening to your friend's music, which is related to an even greater problem of playing your music for your friends. So there's like, I've told this story before on the channel, but one time, and I'm a musician as well, although I don't release music anymore, I just talk about it. A couple of years, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 23 years ago, 25 years ago, I made an album with my band, and I played it for my friend Noah. And I put it on in the car, and I got so nervous playing it for him that I accidentally reversed instead of went forward. And I crashed into his car, and I had to pay $2,000 to fix his car. That's how nervous I was. And the thing is, when I would play our music for our friends, it would always kind of be this same kind of like, geez, can't catch a break with the dogs and the noise and moving around. I've been really excited to record this video, but all these forces are lining against me. Anyways, whenever I'd play my music for people, I would get nervous. And then if somebody I loved or cared about would make music, like I would be nervous for them. And it's a weird experience because when you listen to somebody's music and you know them, you simultaneously like it more and like it less. Like there's a cap to how much you can possibly like it because you can't distinguish your feelings for the person from your feelings from the music. This happens with my brother's music. He makes a lot of good music. This happens with all my friends, all my acquaintances. They press play and this like feeling of dread comes over you. Like, what if this is the worst thing ever? And like I said, like I think this guy's going through a divorce or has just recently gone through a divorce. So I was like, is this going to be, can I borrow a feeling? Like, am I going to hear this and just hate it? And I knew I wanted to do this video because these ideas about parasocial relationships and music, I think are interesting and worth talking about. But like, when I pressed play, I was nervous. Like, how am I going to like this? Am I going to like it enough to review it? Because I don't review things I don't like at all. Like, how do I actually get it? How can I separate it from the personality? And would I experience the same thing in a parasocial relationship? I don't know him. He doesn't know me. Yet, here I am. And it took 2 listens. I had a long workout. It took 2 listens for me to actually separate the personality from the music. And it's one thing I'll say is that it must be difficult for him because he has a huge built-in audience, right? He's a very successful podcaster and website host guy person. And only one song mentions Star Wars, and it's in passing. And I think if he made an album of Star Wars songs, like it would sell or it would be listened to, it would be appreciated, and it would be something easy. But the thing that I like about this guy in general, maybe something I see in myself, is like he just doesn't have enough places to express himself. And so he has to have like a website, and he has to have like a podcast. I think he has a YouTube channel now too, and he has to have a music channel. And he keeps on pushing this all out because he just has a lot to say and not enough places to say it, which is how I feel, which is why I've had a podcast for 10 years and now this YouTube channel for a year and why I'm a teacher and I just, blah. It's kind of like blowhard blues. You know, blowhards get a rough reputation. You know, because it's like if you have a lot to say, it sucks. You know, because you can never say it enough. It's a never-ending hole of just like listen to my awesome ideas. Jesus, how's this for a parasocial relationship? I'm actually letting you into my mental processes. So, with that said, let's actually get to the album and the review. A couple minutes in here, that's fine. But doesn't this make noise? Yeah, here we go. All right, let's get to the review. Oh, I knew I was going to do that. I did. That was on purpose. That was for comedy. It's a solid pop punk record. Oh, Jesus. I thought the dogs were bad. I got to turn this thing off. It's a solid pop punk record, right? So think kind of sort of like in the Weezer vein, you know, kind of like pretty nice dynamics, mainly guitar based. It is fairly amateurish. I mean, like the production, like at times, like it feels like maybe he's a little bit behind the beat on his singing, especially towards the end of the album. His voice isn't particularly strong, but it has a nice effect. Like, he's not a great singer, but the sort of strain that he has to hit the right notes actually brings something interesting to it. So I would say his voice is not always on, but it's always engaging, if that makes sense. And that's more interesting than I think someone who's always on. Some really great dynamics, you know, kind of soft, loud. Again, it's, you know, it's sort of put, I mean, these guys are from Orange County, and it's a very Orange County sounding record. Like, I don't know if you know what that means, but when I think of Orange County, I think of a certain kind of expression, a kind of sort of semi-enlightened, consumer-drenched energy. And that's kind of how this feels. Lyrically, it's very witty, maybe sometimes too witty, but it's also quite personal at times. I think he's best when he's... Actually, you know what? No, I think it's all good. I think the mixture is quite nice because that's at least what I know of him on his own podcast. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play you my stamp, my song of the album. And it's actually not my favorite track, but I think it's the one that will give you an indication if you want to listen further. The name of the track is called Masochist. That's spelled M-A-S-O-K-I-S-S-E-D. Again, that kind of wittiness, which is maybe a bit too clever, but not really, because the whole song seems to be about like trying to figure out some kind of new relationship. Has a nice sort of, I'll play you has a little bit of that nice modality where he sort of goes from a little bit like one kind of singing to another kind of singing. The song kind of hurts. The album kind of hurts because it feels like he's going through something and he's sharing it with us. It's a little "Can I Borrow a Feeling," but not like making fun of it. Like just, you know, like that's just a natural outcropping. Like if you're a middle-aged guy and you're making music, and you're not a rock star, it's all going to be a little bit "Can I Borrow a Feeling." That's a Simpsons reference, by the way. If you don't know what it is, I sincerely feel bad for you. So let's listen to it. The dogs are barking again. Let's change location. Hey, what do you know? There's good lighting down in my basement. So what I heard in that, I don't know if you heard the same thing, is sort of what I like and don't like about this album. I like the guitar work. I like the dynamics. I like the songwriting. You know, it's not exactly my kind of music, you know, like that kind of like guitar-driven music isn't always what I like the most, especially when the singing's kind of whiny. And it's one of the strangest things about listening to it is I associate his voice. You know, I've listened to him several hours a week for 4 years, right? I've listened to this guy speak. It's a funny thing when you meet people, when you're a podcaster or whatever, or a YouTuber, and they say they know they meet you, especially when you're a podcaster, they can't get over talking to you because they're so used to hearing your voice. Like when you actually respond to what they say, they're like, whoa, you're talking back to me. And so, I hear his voice all the time, but what I end up, he doesn't, and the way he's singing is this very kind of like high, unexpected voice. So I'll go kind of track by track. I would say it gets stronger as it goes along. The beginning is actually my least favorite bit, and then the end is my favorite bit. It starts off with a track called Plastic Fruit. I like the lyric. I remember bruises on plastic fruit. Although this sort of feels like a song that's, maybe they sort of think it's sort of like the rocking song to start off the album, but it's one of the more forgettable tracks. And then comes SJW. And this is where the parasocial nature of listening to this guy gets really confusing. Because if you don't know, there's like this whole world of Star Wars podcasting. And just like 2016, shredded the country and everyone's on one side or another, that's actually happened in the Star Wars podcasting world. So like this podcast that I listen to is very much on the left, and another one that I still listen to is very much on the right, and there's kind of like lots of like dog whistles going on, like the other podcast, which is very famous, the first podcast I ever listened to, like they'll sort of say things and you'll sort of be like, oh yeah, these guys are watching some Ben Shapiro, and then you listen to Fourtracula, his podcast, and you sort of hear the same kind of dog whistles, but from the left, from like very leftist commentary. So this track is very much in that vein. I like it though. It's got the throughout the record, there's this nice kind of keyboard that comes in. Maybe even I thought a little bit Devo-ish. Lots of humor, lots of irony. Maybe cringy. I don't know. I mean, we live in a time, and artists have to talk about the time they live in, right? So being called an SJW is something that happens a lot. I actually usually get called a neck-bearded feminist on my podcast, which I like. I don't have a neck beard, do I? I shave my neck a couple times a day. It's interesting. There's this kind of weird breakdown where he sort of sounds like Conky from Pee-wee's Playhouse, and he's all like, cuck, libtard. And I don't know. It's daring. It might be bad, but I don't know. It's an okay song. I think it's a real breaker. Like if you listen to it and you can get through it, you'll like the whole album. If you listen to it and you're like, yeah, it's not for me, then you're not gonna like it. The next track, Black on Neon, is okay. I'm gonna be extrapolating here. Okay, I think this guy is going through a divorce. I don't even know. Okay, like I said, like I listen to him all the time, but I'm not like a fanboy, right? I don't really follow it. But this track sounds to me like the soundtrack to somebody who is just divorced and is dating again and is getting super excited by, online dating or just the prospect of being with somebody new. Maybe I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong and I'm wrong, put it in the comments. My trademark is ignorance, okay? I don't pretend to know what I'm talking about. I just know how to talk about things. If that makes sense. So it's a really nice track, actually. Kind of like an 80s pop thing. Interesting sort of, I really like the music on it, but it feels kind of divorced and horny is kind of the feeling that I get, which is like very much the saddest thing you can have. Because I remember that feeling. I remember talking to my friends about how excited I was to be dating and how happy I was. And they'd all just sort of be like, that sounds great. No, not sad at all. Happy. But I don't know. Maybe this is just a random love song or just a random song about seeing a picture of a girl and thinking she's pretty. I don't know. A track called Automaton. Yeah, it seems like kind of a filler song, kind of interesting. But at least by this point, when I started listening to it, I was getting a little bit more into his style, getting a little more accustomed to it. The track Culture Vultures this is the one where the out-of-tune singing was most clear to me, and I really don't know if it's intentional or not. And it doesn't really matter because I actually like the way it actually works out. Like, it sounds good. I think it sounds better than if you were singing exactly on key. Another nice song with interesting dynamics. Maybe either the best or the worst lyrics. I should say that there's this one lyric on the Black on Neon that's a great example of his humor. That is, I pray the Lord my soul to vape. So like, that's a bad pun, and it's not funny. But it's a good pun, and it's really funny. It's kind of a mixture of those things. It's clever, and he sort of like draws on it, and it seems to be that like he's making fun of himself and a kind of level of self-awareness. And it's a lot of what his podcast is like, where he finds something kind of funny and then runs with it. And you just end up feeling like, that was clever, that was funny. I'm glad I listened to it. But it's not the kind of funny where I would, go to my wife and say, hey, listen to this. And she'd get it, So I don't know. And there's kind of a lot of that on this Culture Vulture song, which kind of fits into the SJW thing. But what do you do if you are a YouTube celebrity or an internet celebrity in a small niche and you're an artist, right? I mean, you have to sing about it. That's the only honest thing to do. So this feels like that. This feels like if he were there with other internet celebrities and he could play music, like they could talk about it together. Anti-social media. It's like, ugh. But then the great line, Culture Vulture, circle tight. Like that's just a nice, well-delivered line that I actually enjoy. The track Kool-Aid Cult Revival is pretty catchy. It just seems to be about sadness, needing your friends and not wanting to bother them, which I think is a pretty important theme. That's the song with the only Star Wars reference in the whole thing. I don't know if, I sort of wish he didn't have it, but you know what? It's his reality, right? Being sad and watching Star Wars must be a lot of anybody's reality. And then this kind of starts this, although I don't know what he says in the lyrics, by the way. If someone could post in the lyrics, in the comments, I think he says, 1,000,000 crosticles? 1,000,000 plastic bubbles? I don't know what he says. It sounds like he says 1,000,000 crosticles. I don't know what a crosticle is. Then towards the end, I really enjoy the last 3 tracks. It's where he sort of lets his sadness take over, and I think that's better. I think it's better than him trying to seem happy. That's just my opinion. The singing, I think, gets more... I enjoy the singing more. The little kind of offbeatness, I enjoy that more. So we start with the track New Depression, which is sad, smart, good guitar layering. It's the most 90s song ever. I think these guys are a couple years younger than me, but very much of the same generation. And this is just... I really suggest, actually, please listen. Please listen to the track New Depression. It's just an excellent 90s style rock song. And then Light of the Day, which I think is my favorite track. I'm not going to play it for you because it's not that exemplary. What's really exemplary is that Masochist. Most of the track is like this. But I would say, if this is a two-way relationship now with Fourtracula, do more like this, because this is kind of this, it's almost preposterous because it's like this sort of slow waltz like on a harpsichord, but I love the production on it. I really like the lyrics. It's kind of sad but clear, not trying to be too clever, and I think melodically it works the best. I think this is the best register for this band, which must be tough because they're sort of trying to present this kind of, hey, we're this, we're that, but the sad stuff actually works really well. And then the final track, I Found You Out, just feels like the end of a friendship. It's a sad track, but the absolute best part of the album, by far, is the guitar at the very end. There's a lot of good guitar work on here. A lot of bits where like guitar will like kind of drop out and then a lead line will come in. And this is the best example. It's almost the very end of the album. And I'm going to play it for you right now, unless putting 2 songs on gets me copyright taken off, in which case you're going to see silence for like 10 seconds. Hopefully you will hear I Found You Out by Fourtracula and the Sexual Intellectuals. Just the guitar bit that I love. Now. So, there it is. There's my review. There's my video essay. What is the relationship of a parasocial... Can you have parasocial music? And how does it relate to somebody who you already have a parasocial relationship with? I think Eric Taxon is another great example of this. I review his stuff every month when he comes out with it. Patricia Taxon, excuse me. And you feel you know them through their music, and that colors the way you listen to their music, and it makes you impartial. I mean, it makes you partial, but how impartial? And it might actually make you partial for the worse. It might make you less kind to it. So there you go. The last thing I'm going to do, because I am a vintage Star Wars podcaster, I'll show you one of my favorite items that I keep down here in the basement just because it's funny. This is a vintage bootleg belt. You got a little floating head up there. You got 3 different R2-D2s. But check this out. Check this out. Check out what it says on the belt buckle. Let the Force be with you. Isn't that funny? Instead of may the Force be with you, it's like, it's so passive. Just, let the Force be with you. Anyways, that's funny. Okay, so for me, for Finn with a lightsaber, and for all your parasocial friends, I wonder if you know me, if you're a fan of this show. Maybe. I don't know how much of myself I let on here. We'll have to find out. Okay, until next time, there's the camera. Oh, for the dogs barking just every single second, making this a hard video. There's the camera.